Hi everyone, this video is on the DCDI Final Fantasy Opera Omnia global version, specifically on the Abyss Miss Memoria stages. And this is a time limited event in conjunction with the release of Vivi's global first LD weapon. As always, before going into the various stages, just a quick disclaimer to give you a better understanding on what this video is and isn't. So first of all, I will only be covering the chaos level stages, so those that are level 180 to 190 and represented by the sort of gold statues on the minimap. Each stage overview on the slide will cover in 3 different color codes. So in yellow will be the overview, a brief overview of the stage itself, and specifically 1 or 2 notable mechanics that you should watch out and prepare for on the stage. The text in blue would be my recommendation on some options of some good ways to prepare for the stages. And lastly, at the bottom of the slide in white text will be some suggestions on notable characters that will make the stage significantly easier. Because there are quite a lot of stages from level 180 to 190 throughout the Miss Memoria Abyss campaign, I will also include a timestamp link in the video description, so in case if you are interested in just a specific stage or two, you can use the timestamp to jump to the stage that you are interested in. Do note that this video is not an in-depth analysis, otherwise the video would be too lengthy. So I decided to keep it and make a much shorter video, and it's really meant to give you ideas on each stage in case you have yet to complete this Abyss event. You can refer to the particular stages that you have left to complete and try to see and get some ideas on how to best prepare for the stage. Also note that there are many viable strats that work, so the good thing about this Abyss event is you're not locked to 1 or 2 specific characters that are considered mandatory to complete. In fact, there are many different ways that will allow you to complete, and the slides I gave will really only cover a few of the options that will make it much easier for you to complete. And again, if I were to put in as many different options as possible, it will make the slide and the video too complicated and lengthy. So do try to experiment with the various units that you have. Even if you don't have the units listed on the slide, it doesn't mean that you are not able to complete the stage. And the units or the characters on each slide that I have listed is really just my personal top picks overall, and there could be many others that others have used with great success, so the list is really by no means exhaustive. Okay, so before I head on into each specific stage, just want to quickly cover the code restrictions in the Miss Memoria event. So similar to past Abyss events, there are code restrictions for each of the levels, and I put the code requirements on this slide here. So on the main floor, you need to have a black and white crystal character, a staff user, as well as a character from Final Fantasy IX in your party. In fact, for the entire Abyss Miss Memoria, you need to at least have 1 Final Fantasy IX character in your party, so I won't repeat that again. In the sub 1 stages, you also need to have either a blue or black crystal character and 1 dagger user. And in sub 2, you need to have a green crystal character, broadsword user, and a staff user. The notable thing that differentiates these from Abyss Perfectum is that your units will not be restricted after each fight. So if you have 1 or 2 key units that you've really built up, you can actually reuse them over and over again to make things a little bit easier throughout this Abyss event. And since this fight requires you to bring a Final Fantasy IX character, any Final Fantasy 9 character that you bring are actually boosted in terms of their attack and max bravery. So in case you're wondering, on this side I've put the Final Fantasy 9 characters, and I sort of ordered them in my view from the most viable to least viable just for this event. The first three would be Vivi, Aiko, and Zidane, and that's why this Abyss event was also released with a banner featuring these three characters. Vivi, if you manage to get his LD, makes the entire Abyss Miss Memoria event very easy, and you can actually use him in every single stage for significantly easier clears. You do need to pair him up with specific characters for different parts of this Abyss event, but otherwise he brings significantly great DPS to the party. Eiko is good for this event for two reasons. One is she complements Vivi very well with her healing, and the other is that she also meets a lot of the code requirements that I just mentioned. Zidane, likewise, in one of the sub-stratum, he fulfills both a blue and a dagger user, and at this stage of the game he's still a decent DPS unit. Garnet I feel is good for this event because she's a green crystal and a staff user, and therefore she also fulfills many of the code requirements whilst being quite a decent support unit. Freya, I listed her slightly below the rest because she meets less of the code requirements. Having said that, as a Final Fantasy 9 character, she is notable here with having the ability to give your party the last stand passive, which would make some of the fights significantly easier because a lot of the fights feature AoE, HP, heavy damage with the potential to kill one or more party members. Beatrix, I put her there for the same reason as Freya. With her EX, she has the ability to negate HP damage for one turn, and her damage is still okay-ish, but she's a red crystal character, so she fulfills less of the requirements than the above four characters. Kuja, at this stage, I feel his DPS is a bit behind the rest, although he is due for an LD weapon soon, but his release will be after the time limit for this Abyss event is over. And lastly, Steiner. Steiner is okay. He's not bad. He is also usable and definitely viable here since he is boosted. It's just from a relative point of sense, among the 8 Final Fantasy 9 characters, I feel he has the least to offer specifically for this Mist Memoria event. At best, you should try to bring at least one fully loaded FF9 character so that you will meet one of the code requirements, and then you can build around them to try to counter each stage chaos mechanics. Okay, so I'll be jumping into each chaos level stage in the Abyss event, and I'll start off with the main floor first. So starting off, the first chaos fight is the Miss Memoria Part 2 stage, and on each slide, as you can see here, I will again list down the crystal or the code requirements for easy reference. So this stage has 2 waves, which is consisting of a pair of Chimera Golems and Chimera Nova. The notable thing about this fight is that both waves can buff themselves with generic buffs, and the Chimera Nova on wave 2, once it hits the 70% and 50% HP threshold, it will gain the ability to do double and triple attacks respectively on each of its turns, which can be quite dangerous, especially since it has a large max brave stat, so it can amass huge amounts of max brave on its turn and easily break one or more party members. So the thing that makes this fight significantly easier is to have Dispeller or Debuffers to help remove the generic buffs that they can grant themselves. and either having some sort of tank or a way to disable the Chimera Nova on the second wave really makes the fight significantly easier. So some notable characters. Kefka is good because he can inflict 6 frame debuffs, which will push off the generic buffs, and he also has the useful HP attack disable. Arciela as well. On the second wave, if you see the Chimera Nova targeting all, it's a signal that it will about to use its AoE HP damage, so you can then inflict HP attack disable on it to buy you additional turns. Likewise, Elnach can also inflict terror. If you don't have any of those characters, then having a tank such as Zack or Warrior of Light will also help to reduce the incoming damage, and Warrior of Light shield can at least absorb some of the brave attacks that the Chimera Nova can do during its double or triple attack sequence. Chantoto I list here because she meets the requirement of a Black Crystal and Staff user, and she can also inflict paralysis through her LD, which helps you to buy additional turns on the second wave. Emperor likewise also fulfills the White Crystal requirement, and he can push off the generic buffs by inflicting his trap debuffs. And lastly, Strago I list because he's a White Crystal and Staff user, so he fulfills some of the code requirements, and he very nicely can do instant break on the Chimera Nova when they amass a large amount of bravery, and help to delay them through his breaks as well. Moving on to Miss Memoria Part 3, here we have 2 waves consisting of a pair of Sahagin Shaman and a pair of Weapon Keeper. The Sahagin Shaman can grant themselves buffs through the skill Supplication for Grace, and they have also AoE attacks. The Weapon Keeper has some sort of charging mechanic called Colossal or Titanic Energy Draw, which buffs itself and also batteries itself. So here you really want Dispellers or Debuffers to help to remove the generic buffs, and because the Weapon Keeper can Brave Battery itself, and when doing so also grants himself Brave Damage Reduction, so having Gravity based or Instant Break characters can be helpful, specifically on the Weapon Keeper. So here again, similarly to the previous stage, Kefka and Arciela really shines because they also meet the code requirements. Gabrant, Strago and Trey represent instant break characters, although Trey and Gabrant will be the wrong crystal color for this fight. Elnach is a black crystal character and can inflict terror to buy you additional turns, and similarly Emperor can help to push off the debuffs with his traps. The generic buffs with his traps. Moving on to Miss Memoria Part 5. Here we have a pair of White Keelan and a pair of Merilith Tempest. The White Keelan can have a sort of state or stance called Storm Calling. You can actually see it using that move, and it will ensure that when it uses its next Dark Ra or Dark Gar attack, it will have an instant follow-up with an AoE HP attack called White Lightning Black Thunder. Merilith Gloria is immune to many debuffs, and she hits very hard. She also has the standard Brave into HP attacks in her arsenal. So for this fight, having tanks really help a lot. HP attack disable or evasion last stand can also help you survive the White Lightning and Black Thunder. So notable characters here are Warrior of Light, who although cannot prevent the HP portion of the attacks from both waves, he can significantly reduce the HP damage you take because his shields prevent both bosses from getting Brave from their AoE Brave attacks. The attacks across both waves are also non-elemental, so Leon will actually convert the Brave component of their AoE attacks into Brave for you, and likewise will reduce the incoming HP damage. Bash of course can redirect all HP damage to himself, which is quite notable on the White Killian fight. The only drawback here is that he doesn't meet any of the code requirements, so you need to really build around him carefully. Arciela can be used to inflict HP attack disable, and if you don't have any of these, you can use Freya for last stand, Beatrix for the emergency HP damage reduction to 0 through her EX. H can help to provide evasion to the party, although with H and Beatrix and Freya, they don't meet any of the crystal code requirements, and H is also not a Final Fantasy IX character. Eldnudge can at least inflict terror, and Porum functions the same way as Bash in providing HP damage mitigation. Coming to part 6, and for part 6 on the main floor, I feel this is the most challenging fight, other than of course the final fight of Abyss Miss Memoria. So this fight has a pair of Heretic Kraken and Count Steam. The Krakens have high speed and turn rate, and at the start they will use Unbind, which will further raise their speed. They can also inflict speed down on your party members. So all this in combination makes them dangerous because they have a tendency of getting their turns come up pretty quickly, sometimes even back to back, which will be very dangerous to your party. Likewise, the Count's team also has high speed, and notably he has an AoE HP attack that cannot be mitigated by HP damage reduction, so you need to find other ways to actually survive this attack. I find that using Leviathan Summon for its speed down blessing helps a lot, and having some form of speed debuffers also help to keep the fight much more manageable. Having Brave based tanks such as Warrior of Light or even 9 would help, or Disablers paired with decent healers or turn manipulation can also help. So Warrior of Light and 9 I think are quite good for this fight. Leon as well, because most of the attacks here are non-elemental. The Kraken can use water-based attack and the Count's team can use fire-based attacks, but those attacks are generally just brave attacks. So Leon helps to prevent the more dangerous attacks that these two bosses have. Kefka and Arciela again for their HP attack disable and also meeting the code requirements. Eldnudge likewise. Priestess, I put her here because she can help to delay and buy you additional turns, plus she inflicts turn rate down and speed down, which helps to slow down the bosses considerably, making them more manageable. And Noctis and Realm I list here mainly for their turn manipulation, so they can help you get around the high speed that both bosses have. Miss Memoria Part 7, which is the final stage on the main floor. This consists of 3 waves. First wave is a pair of Chimera Nova. Second wave is the combination of a Weapon Keeper and White Killian. And the last stage is a pair of Count's team. So the bosses from the previous Chaos fights into one. Now this fight is very heavy on the AoE HP attacks. Every wave has it. So having a way to mitigate this helps a lot. Please do note that HP reduction again will not work on wave 3 because the Count's team can bypass that. So again here I think having a Leviathan Summon helps. If you don't have a reliable way of healing, you can consider Alexander's Summon as well. But considering the huge amount of AoE HP attacks here, I would recommend to bring in some form of party-wide healing. Brave tanks or disablers paired with decent healers will also help. So again, Warrior of Light, Leon, Kefka, Arciela, Eldnudge, and particularly Amidatalion will help a lot. I actually use Amidatalion for my run. The biggest drawback is she doesn't fulfill any of the code requirements as well, so you need to find two other party members who can meet all 4 of the code requirements if you want to use her. And lastly, Shantoto. Okay, so moving on to the sub 1 stage. On the first fight or first chaos fight in the sub 1 stratum, which is part 3, you have 2 waves consisting of a pair of heretic Humbabas and sergeant imps. Notably, both waves are heavily magic resistant, so you do need to take note of that when building your party. The Humbaba is not too bad. It can delay you with Humbaba's breath, and it will eventually use an attack called Needle Shot. The bigger threat I feel is coming from the Sergeant Imp. When it targets all, it's a signal that it's about to use an attack called Calamity Bomber. And that attack is notable because not only is it an AoE HP attack, it actually does 100% damage instead of split damage to your party. So to get around this, HP damage reduction is really key here. So I feel having either Bash or Porom is supreme here. The biggest drawback is neither of them meet the code requirements, so you need to find 2 other party members to fulfill the code requirements. Age and Freya can be used for evasion and last stand respectively, and I think Age deserves special mention here because he alone meets 2 of the 4 code requirements because he's a blue crystal and dagger user. In a pinch, Kimari can work because the Calamity Bomber isn't used very frequently, and you can tell when it's about to come because it's the only AoE attack the Sergeant Imps have. So when you see them targeting all, you can just have Kimari use his EX to inflict total blindness and save your party from Calamity Bomber. In the sub 1 part 4 stage, you have 2 waves consisting of a pair of Ice Gigas and on wave 2 a pair of Crust Beetles. This fight has different resistance. Wave 1 is range resist and wave 2 is magic resist. And this entire fight really punishes you if you let your characters get broken. The Ice Gigas will follow up a break with Ice Quake, which is a very heavy AoE brave attack and also high turn rate. So very frequently after using Ice Quake, its turn will come out very quickly, and if you are not able to shave it, it will then do massive HP damage to your party member. Crust Beetle has a mechanic where they will grant themselves into a stance called Hatred Power, and in that stance, if they break you, they will get an immediate follow-up HP attack, which most of the time under normal circumstances will lead to one party member dying. So in this fight in particular, having shield based tanks or at the very least characters who can battery the party works really well. Notably, the attacks or the HP attacks that they do are all physical based, so Galuf can also be used here to great success. The only thing to watch out for is that the Crust Beetles do have an AoE Brave and HP attack called Crust Disaster, so when he uses that, Galuf will not be able to protect your other 2 party members, but as long as none of them gets broken by Crust Disaster, you should be able to survive pretty comfortably. So notable characters are Warrior of Light 9 Galuf. Zek can work even though the Crust Beetles are heavily magic resistant and Zek's EX is magic based. Bash and Afmao as well. I put Afmao in here because she's a great support, and notably many of her attacks can battery the entire party, which also helps you to prevent breaks. Miss Memoria Sub 1 Part 5, 2 waves. First wave is a pair of Holy Dragon and the second wave is a single Dark Bahamut. The Holy Dragons are pretty harmless. They can cleanse debuffs and buff themselves, but otherwise, as long as you keep them broken, they are pretty much very low risk. Dark Bahamut notably has Mega Flare, and from what I can tell, it always opens the fight using Mega Flare and thereafter uses it once every few turns. It hurts a lot. It's an AoE HP attack, and notably if you summon, once summon ends, it will automatically counter with Mega Flare. So you do need to make sure to use your summon only when you are comfortable or confident that you can kill it inside summon. So the best way is to have some form of damage mitigation or at least disablers. Or if you don't have any of those, evasion or last stand can also work in a pinch. Notably, on wave 2 Dark Bahamut is alone, which makes delayers work really well against Dark Bahamut. So notable characters, Kefka and Arciela for HP attack disable, Bash and Porum for damage mitigation. Bash works really well in this fight, although he doesn't meet the code requirements. H and Freya again for evasion or last stand, Eldnudge for terror lock. Edward can work, his LD can inflict sleep to prevent Mega Flare and buy you additional turns, and of course he can hide to reduce or to prevent damage to himself. Leon can also work because Mega Flare is a non-elemental attack, so Leon will actually enable your party to absorb the brave component of the attack. And Christies and Keys mainly because they work really well on single target fights. So Christies can delay Dark Bahamut to Oblivion, and Keys can help you create launches and have some form of turn manipulation. Miss Memoria Sub 1 Part 6, which is the final fight in Sub 1, has 3 waves. So a pair of Sergeant Imps on wave 1, pair of Crust Beetles on wave 2, and a single Dark Bahamut on wave 3. Notably, wave 1 and 2 are magic resistant, so you have to be careful about that when building your party. The biggest threats again are the AoE HP damage, specifically from Calamity Bomber and Mega Flare. The Crust Beetles also have AoE HP damage in the form of Crust Disaster. In this fight, damage mitigation is, I feel, the best strategy. If you don't have any tank whatsoever, you can still win the fight. You have to play carefully on wave 2, and in fact it's better to summon on wave 2. And on wave 1 and wave 3 you need to have other means of surviving the AoE HP attack. So Bash works really well. He can also taunt the Crust Beetles. Porum works in a similar way to Bash in terms of the HP damage reduction mechanic. Otherwise, some options to disable the attacks come in the form of Eldnudge, Kefka or Arciela HP attack disable, although both Kefka and Arciela are magic based, which makes it much more challenging to use them. Moving on to the Sub 2 Stratum. So the first Chaos fight is in Sub 2 Part 2, which is 2 waves consisting of Heretic Lich and Skull Wizard. This fight isn't too challenging. The Heretic Lich is quite okay as long as you keep it broken. The Skull Wizard will eventually use a move called Brazenly, it smirks, and this is the game warning you that it will use Candle in the Wind on its next attack. And Candle in the Wind does massive HP damage. It doesn't have a Brave component. It's a Brave battery into HP attack, and this needs to be somehow mitigated, otherwise it will lead to a character dying. The Skull Wizard can also buff themselves with generic buffs. So here the key is damage mitigation and evasion. Notably, you can in a limited way manipulate the fight because Candle in the Wind will always be targeting your party member with the highest HP. So if you don't have any tanks, again, one option is to have characters with last stand and before the fight just equipping passives and de-equipping passives from the other party members to make sure that the characters with last stand has the highest HP. So this way Candle in the Wind will always hit the last stand character, and you can quickly heal them up after this attack. So notable characters are Kefka and Arciela. For the HP attack disable, they can delay the Candle in the Wind for 2 turns each. Bash and Porum can work. Galuf works really well here because the Candle in the Wind is a physical attack, And Galuf also meets 2 of the 4 code requirements. He's a green crystal and a broadsword user. Otherwise, H. Cater can also taunt Candle in the Wind, and hopefully she can evade that attack, although it's a bit more RNG based and she doesn't meet the code requirements. And as mentioned, if you have none of them, you can also consider using last stand characters and pairing them with potent healers. One good option for a healer comes in the form of Garnet, because she meets 3 of the 4 code requirements, which gives you a lot of flexibility to build around in terms of party composition. Miss Memoria Sub 2 Part 3 consists of 3 waves, all of them with 3 mannequins. You have Vincent, Ramza and H on wave 1, Lilithette, Lightning and Sarah on wave 2, and Jack, Laguna and Kate Sif on wave 3. The danger in this fight is that Ramza and Kate Sif can buff the entire enemy party, and one of the more dangerous buffs is that both of them can grant Brave Regen, which makes it very dangerous, particularly on wave 3, because Jack has the ability to use Jack Slash Plus if he starts the turn with significant Brave, which is likely due to the Brave Regen that Kate Sif provides. So Dispellers or Debuffers work really well here. If you remove the buffs that Ramza and Kate Sif grant, you will negate most of the risk coming from this fight. If you don't have any form of Dispellers or good debuffers, one other option is to inflict poison sap effects to help counter the Brave Regen mechanics. So notable characters, the best character I feel here would be Kefka. He can enframe 6 debuffs, which prevent the enemies from buffing themselves. The drawback though is he doesn't meet any of the code requirements. Arciela, likewise, she can dispel through her Ascension skill. Shantoto can inflict many debuffs which help to push off the buffs that they grant. Plus she also has a poison and sap effect in her kit. Galuf meets 2 of the 4 code requirements, and he can actually dodge and evade encounters, Jack Slash and Jack Slash Plus. In fact, almost every attack across the 3 waves that is HP in nature are physical attacks, so Galuf works again really well here. If you don't have Galuf built up, Bash and Zack can also work. You do need to watch out for the HP attacks, but Zack can comfortably tank most of it, and of course Bash is immortal with his LD. Miss Memoria Sub 2 Part 4 has 2 waves. First wave is a pair of Coral Assassins, and the second wave is a single Kaiser Behemoth. Notably, the Coral Assassin can inflict a range of debuffs, and the Kaiser Behemoth hits really hard. I feel for this fight, having debuff immunity helps a lot, and of course having a tank will really make it easier as well. So the most notable character really for this fight would be Afmal. She stands out because she prevents all the debuffs that the Coral Assassin can do, plus she also batteries the entire party, which helps to give you a form of protection against the hits that the Kaiser Behemoth can do. She also fulfills at least the green crystal requirement in the code. If you don't have Afmal, Lena can work, but she doesn't meet any of the code requirements. One notable thing here is every single attack across the 2 waves are non-elemental. So where non-elemental is concerned, Leon is a fantastic tank because he can convert all Brave damage into Brave healing for your party. Again, in a pinch, Galuf will work because the HP attacks are physical based. Sas deserves special mention, I feel, because if you don't have debuff immunity, you can also function by having a buffer to push off the debuffs the Coral Assassin can do. And Sas not only is a great support unit, he also applies many buffs across your party, which will push off most of the debuffs that the Coral Assassin can do. And finally, on the last stage of Sub 2, which is Sub 2 Part 6, you have 3 waves, which is a pair of Skull Wizards on Wave 1, the Jacked Laguna and Kitsif Mannequins on Wave 2, apologies for the typo on the slide, and Kaiser Behemoth on Wave 3. The notable attacks to watch out for, similar to the previous stages, are Candle in the Wind on the first wave, Jack Slash Plus on Wave 2, and Kaiser Behemoth has an AoE HP attack called Sunder. Galuf tanking is really the best here. If you have Galuf, you pretty much have this fight in the back, because Wave 1 will never be able to hurt you, likewise with Wave 2. And the only attack the Kaiser Behemoth has that can hurt your other party members are Sunder, and Sunder itself doesn't hit particularly hard. Most of the time you can comfortably survive the attack. So notable characters: Kefka, Arciela, and Galuf. If you have any of the 3, you have this fight pretty much in the back. Of the 3, I think again Galuf is the best, because he meets 2 of the 4 code requirements. So that's it. Just want to finish off the fight with a TLDR version. First of all, if you have Vivi, he makes the fight significantly easier, but it is really not mandatory to have Vivi. So if you really feel you need to save your resources and skip on the banner with Vivi, you can comfortably use other built-up units to complete the entire Miss Memoria event. However, you do need to go through your roster to find your best equipped FF9 character. Tanks this time play a huge role. So Bash, Galuf, Warrior Light, or Zac really helps to mitigate a lot of the deadly attacks. Of the 4, Bash and Galuf really stands out a lot. But really, having any 1 or 2 of these tanks will already help you in a great way. There are many AoE HP attacks throughout the entire Miss Memoria event. So disablers such as Eldnach, Kefka, and Arciela really shine as well because of that. And I feel the best way, because this is an Abyss stage, is to look at what is the most dangerous attack or mechanic in each of the Chaos stage here. Dedicate 1 party member that can really counter that mechanic. Again, you can go back to the slides I have shown to see which are the most deadly attacks or mechanics in each fight. And once you have 1 party member to counter the mechanic, then it's just a matter of rounding off your party by picking 2 other party members that work really well together and also fulfill the code requirements. That's it for this video. As always, if this has been of help and you enjoyed the video, do leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really helps. Till then, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.